Hey kids, welcome to another episode of Glen Yaps. This one is called Control Freak. Many have called me a control freak in the past, and I don't mind that title whatsoever. I'm going to let you know why on a lot of stuff I am a control freak, and just a little bit of history of things that didn't go well for me, to kind of lead into me taking the reins more of what I was doing, my playing as it was being recorded, and how it got me to where I am recording in my own studio. I was going to try and make this quick because normally I talk too much. So I'm going to use a couple of examples, probably 4 examples. I'm just going to talk about the recording side of things. Being a control freak in a band is a whole other video, basically. So anyways, been in a bunch of bands where we all wrote original material. We contributed to the music. And when it's all said and done and you hear the final product, in my personal case, the recordings have been discouraging to hear the final result. That has to do obviously with someone being at the board, the band just listening to this person and believing them that they're doing the right thing, and you kind of hand over control, figuring the money that you're paying to this guy, he should know what he's doing, and the result should be what you want to hear. Unfortunately, rarely that is the case. Okay. I've been in the studio since I was a little kid. When I was in high school and that, doing commercials for radio, got hired to do little on-air jingles for certain businesses in town. So in that kind of case, you go in, you play drums, and you hand off all that to the producer or the engineer, and they take care of it. You're basically there for one function, and that is to supply a drum line and or a guitar, bass, whatever, and basically get your paycheck and out you go. You have no say in the final outcome. In that case, it's like, that's fine. It's not like the commercials telling you all the musicians that played on it and, you know, giving you praise and all that. They're paying for a jingle, and that's all. That's all you're worth to them. You're just studio musician, and once it's done, you're out. Anyway, so I was in a bunch of bands. We all, original bands, and you always have this goal to put out an album, a tape. Back in the day, it was cassette tape. You might get a single 45. In my case, my first studio experience was with a band that was doing an original, was a band called The Hostage, I think, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong on that. And we rehearsed here and went into the studio and had fun with it, recording. It was like, just a fun time. And the thing about being in the studio, it's you're under a microscope. You hear your pluses and minuses, and so when I heard the final product, I was more disappointed in my own playing. I can't speak for the other guys. It's been too many years. It's been decades since I recorded that. So I was disappointed in my own playing, because at that time we didn't record to a click track. So you're at the mercy of everybody's feel. I didn't know these guys very well. They're all good musicians, but the meter, it just felt wrong on the recording. They weren't doing anything with it. It was just a fun thing to pass out to friends and stuff. So it was no big deal. Gets into the part where you start wanting to put out a CD, and you're spending lots of money, then you really want to pay more attention. So with that first song, it was a learning experience, because I'd only done jingles before that. I never really heard the final product until it was on the local radio stations or television stations. So nothing. I mean, they're to sell a product, not the music. But with this first song was like a learning experience. I learned, okay, I don't like the drum sound. I don't like this. I don't like that. I like this. I like that. You kind of dissect it. And then you put it in your memory bank so that whenever you go in again, you're going to try and do it better. So at that time, the studio is a local-owned studio. Everybody went to the studio. And the product out of the studio was always the same sound. It's kind of weird how that happened, but it's a signature sound, and it didn't matter if it was a different style of music. That quality sound always seemed to come out of that studio. So I realized, even just after that first song I did with that one band, and then hearing other periodic or sporadic projects after from other people, that I didn't care for the actual sound coming out of that studio. So one person was in charge. So that just meant they seemed to have control over what was going out. And in some ways I understand that. It's, it's the only studio, that's their signature, and they're obviously making money at it. They're also putting out a lot of product. It just sounded, every recording sounded uneventful to me. It just sounded like, you know what, I can do this. I'm sure I can at least equal the product there, and not have to pay thousands of dollars. So fast forward, I bought recording gear, reel-to-reel, multi-trackers and stuff, and started learning the stuff. Anyway, so when it comes down to the control thing, I got into other band projects. We'll come back to my studio thing after. I went into the studio. I'm going to hold up the album. We went into the same studio that I recorded those jingles on. This is Rainhorses. This was put out, I think, in '95. It's folk rock music, and it was popular back then. We did really well. We had good audiences. But this album is the second album. I joined the band after the first album. So, recorded at the same studio. Now, a few of the guys in the band were with the band for the first album they did. And I went in one time to help the drummer out with getting some type of drum sounds for them for their first album. Was friends with all the guys. But when the album came out, it had that same sound. Same sound. So it's disappointing. When I joined Rainhorses, and when the bass player, the new bass player, joined for the second album with me, we've been playing in bands for ages together. We both said, you know what, we gotta change the sound of this. It can't come out this sounding the same as these other products. We wanted something cleaner. I guess the word cleaner. Cleaner, and we also wanted a sound that you could hear everything. I always found that the other recordings, you couldn't hear anything properly. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was the EQing in that studio. But anyways, we said when we went in the second for this second Rainhorse album that we were going to make sure that every part could be heard. Irrelevant to the final product, we wanted things that if I played something on the drums, everything I did could be heard. I mean, that looks pretty simple to say that. Actually getting that result is a lot harder than just speaking the words. So with this album, we ended up recording it. You're always in under somebody's control. There were some things that were good, some things that were bad about the process of recording all the parts and stuff that I wasn't happy with. But at the end of the day, we all had a hand in how the album sounded.
Take it away to the ocean of words in mind. Look above to the thoughts that we sober mind. Take it away to the ocean of words in mind. Look above to the thoughts that we sober mind. Hey, over my head.
The engineer definitely had the most control, but at least we had our fingers in the pie. And although we didn't get, we got good flack, like good feedback for the clarity. We also got feedback because the album sounded a little bit thin. So unfortunately, time was money at the time. So the album had to be. I think we recorded it in 4 days, 2 days to track everything, and then 2 days to mix. And then our main guy was moving away to school, so it came down to time and money. So we could have gone the extra mile and done more to it, but at the time, we were happy at that point. And the feedback on the album reflected that. So we knew we were on the right track. So we fast forward again. We did other stuff with the Rainhorses in the studio, and we followed that same process, and still got a clear result that we were happy with, because of the money and the time factor again involved. But still, we knew we were going in the right direction, and we just needed time.
I said, no, it's not rain. Upon your head, those are just my thoughts, tracing shadows on your floor, reading notes upon your door. How was tracing shadows.
Unfortunately, the band broke up, and that was the end of that. So, but I carried all that knowledge from what we learned then to future projects. So let's go fast forward to recording of this album. This is Wishbone, first album, Making Wishes, Breaking Bones. This one I was called in to record the drums for on short notice. They had a drummer. It wasn't working out. He couldn't play to a click track. I was struggling with it. So I knew one of the guys in the band. I didn't know the other two guys. He was a guy I played with in a band. So I got the call. They came over. They gave me a bed track of, I think it was acoustic, some electric, and a click track. And so I was to learn the drums, do them all my way. So that part I liked. So what that does is lets me work on the song myself, go in and just lay it out the way I figured the drum tracks to be. I didn't want anything of the old drummer. I didn't want to hear one thing. I told him, I said, if you want me to do it and you're in the studio already and you're booked and the clock is ticking, I want to be able to do my own thing. I said, I won't go overboard. I'll follow what you guys are doing, but it has to be my own thing. I do not want to copy someone else's drum parts. So everything was cool for that. The downfall to this is the way this studio operated, which is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. You basically record the tracks, and this guy would do all the mixing and stuff, and it was almost like he'd mix the entire album and then call you in, and if you liked it, then he would tweak it. It wouldn't be like he would come and say, you want to come and listen to your drum sound? It was just stupid. So right away I'm going, this is not going to sound, it's not going to sound good from a drummer's point of view, because drums are really a pain in the ass to mix. I know I've been doing it for a long time, and I don't know what it is about drums, but every song is different when it comes to drums. So I understood the process by that point, because we're talking, I think, 2009 when this album came out. So I was just a fill-in guy for the band, for the recording studio. So I really had zero say. So anyways, the album went away, was recorded. I heard the bed tracks. I'm going, first thing I said, I can't hear my hi-hats, the patterns. I can't hear what I'm playing. I can't hear the ghost strokes on the snare, which I play constantly in songs. Couldn't hear the ride cymbal patterns. What had happened is, and the thing is, the drum set was gated, electronically gated to death. And what that means is it just gets ripped of all its ambience. So the drummer didn't, or the engineer at that time, for whatever reason, doesn't like things to ring beyond a certain point. I was totally, I'll be honest, I was pissed off. But being that I did it for friends, did the album for friends, I did it for free. They were paying the bill on the album. So I said, well, you're already in a bad spot, so I won't take any money. So, and I paid the price for that. So I was, again, like, I mean, the album did well. It sold really good. But I friggin' hate the mix on the drums. And that's where I started getting this control thing happening. Big time when it came to studios, because it's like, okay, these guys hired me and they aren't getting what they should have got for the money. So I'm not ticked off at the band, but I am ticked off at the engineer for letting that go. So put that aside.
Stop me like the kamikaze, I hopped upon the sake. Get your gentle back upon the walkie-talkie. I'm not a soldier, but I bet you never stop me. Yeah.
So we didn't learn a lesson, band-wise. So again, around the same time, I forgot the year of this album. This was around the same time, or just after that Wishbone album. This is Huckster, designed for real life. Okay. Now this band I got into because a friend they had a previous band, and anyways, whatever. I'm not going to go into details, but they changed singers. We're doing cover tunes. changed singers. They wanted to do originals. The guy that got me in the band, the bass player, had a falling out with the guitar player, left. So now I'm in a band of strangers. And they wanted to write original material. So okay, so the guitar player had a few songs from some previous works, so we included that in here and just proceeded to keep writing and writing and writing and writing and writing. So we got a bass player and kept going and going. So we wrote all these songs. I recorded pretty much all the basement recording, writing sessions. I have boxes full of all the stuff from this album. It wasn't a fun experience. I'm with this band. Communication was bad on this band, but needless to say, I stuck through it to get these songs recorded. Again, we go to the same studio as the Wishbone album, and then we have the engineer wanting me to bring in some of my vintage snare drums and experimenting with the sounds and stuff. And I said, okay. I said, well, I wasn't happy with the drums on this other one. Well, we've got better mics now and all that. I know it's not mics, but I let them talk anyways. So we record this album. I wasn't happy with this band, so I ended up leaving. So again, to my dismay, when the album came out, this was even worse than the Wishbone album. Like I say, the problem with the studio is they wouldn't listen. That's my experience from it. Wouldn't listen. I brought in my best kit, which was just 4 drums from this. These are the most recorded drums in the world, and most of the recordings are great for this. They sound great on their own. I don't know how anybody could screw that up, but this album screwed it up. You cannot hear anything to do with hi-hats on this. It's just, everything is sucked away. It's just oversaturated with noise gates. It's just brutal. I can't even listen to this album. It's like a shock. It was a shock how bad it is. The songs are great. I like the songs. I mean, I'm part of the core that wrote the songs. I'm just talking the recording session. The worst. So this guy, this engineer, he had, I think, ribbon mics and, you know, all this top stuff to record these drums, and they sound like crap. But not once would a suggestion by me for my own drums enter this album. So I left the band disappointed. I was just disappointed in the whole process of this this band, plus the recording session was horrible. The best part of this band was live. I love live, but the recording thing angered me. Oh, I can't tell you how pissed off I was. So, anyways, that one goes down the toilet. So then we come into Wishbone. I got a call back from Wishbone. They want me to come back in. They want me to become a member of this band again. So we do a whole bunch of songs. I have tons of bass recordings of us working on this album, plus the follow-up. with everybody contributing. We had a couple of member changes after this album when we were recording the third album. But we're just talking about this second album. Now, the second album. The second album was pretty much a continuation of the first. Same engineer, same studio. I've always been puzzled why people want to keep digging into something that never worked before, but was out of my hands. Again, hired gun, come in and do this album. They offered me the drum throne at that time, so I said, okay, we'll do it. I could not get it into this engineer's head. I brought in 10 vintage snares, and it was horrible. But the result is a bit better than the first album. So I did get something in there. Unfortunately, the studio was closing. The guy was moving away to California to seek his fame and fortune in engineering, if that ain't funny enough. And he's probably famous now. What do I know? All I know is this, and the recording on it is just not very good. The album's fine. Like, the album, there's nothing wrong with the songs, nothing wrong with how the band played them. No, we did our job, but it's the mixing. So anyways, this one you can hear more of my drum stuff, but to my shock, some of the kick drum notes are missing on one of the songs, and I was like flabbergasted. It's like, how do you miss this? How do you miss this where you accidentally deleted parts of the drum track? I could play the song in my sleep. I mean, I'm a rehearse nut when it comes to original material. And so I got the final product after. Like I say, it wasn't like you could all sit around the sound desk and then critique all your parts. Like normal studios, it just wasn't like that. But anyways, so this album turned me into a massive, massive control freak when it comes to my drums now. And it's not for the overall sound, because if I do drum tracks for people, I want them to have every sound bit I can of the kit and the notes I'm playing. This erased a lot of that, which is wrong. This was the recording process and not so much the final mix. Something was screwed up in the recording process. So it's too late to find out what it was, nor do I care now. All I know is I don't want to ever go back to, well, more so this one. I can live with this one. This one here. This one, I cannot live with. This is an insult. So, all the same studio. Which is funny because, remember I started this conversation with the studio we were playing in back in the 90s. Everything sounded the same. This one was all over the place. So, it was the complete opposite. So what I'm saying about the control thing, I became a control freak because on every recording that I do now, I want to make sure that when I record that every inch of my drum set is covered by microphone sound. Like, I want what I play to be recorded. I don't want to have to go, what the hell? You know, I can't hear that. There was like an eighth note funky hi-hat pattern there. Where is it? It's gone. So my focus has always been on the detail now. Now, you can criticize some of the mixes I have, which is totally fine. My main goal is to make sure every instrument in a recording is heard. I don't care how long that takes on my stuff. If I'm doing a project with somebody else and we're working to a final goal of putting it online or whatever, in finished form, we're not talking demos, we're talking finished form, you have to be able to hear all the parts. You don't want anybody disappointed. I mean, obviously there's some things where the frequencies fight. You have to figure it out. You have to figure out to make space where these frequencies all fit. Like, why have people play on it and get disappointed? Why pay good money for something when the part you played is obliterated? You know, there's got to be some truth there. I just found this last 3 albums, the truth factor wasn't there of why this sounded the way it did. So inexperience, probably, maybe, I don't know. I mean, he's done other albums that got praise. I've listened to them. It's the same clarity issue. I just don't hear it. So that is the control factor for me. Now, I am absolutely anal about hearing the parts of the drum kit that I play. It is absolutely stupid for me to have a top-of-the-line kit and have been playing for this many years, only to have the parts I play overcovered or faded in the mix. I'm not talking ego. I'm talking clarity where what you play is actually heard. If I can't hear it, then there's no chance that anybody else is going to hear it. I know the parts I played. If I can't hear them, there's something wrong. That goes for guitar. That goes for acoustic picking. Anything to do with finesse, guitar players picking. If I can't hear it. The problem I have with a lot of this too is you get a lot of, like in the case of the Huckster album, all I hear is guitar. I don't hear anything else. The vocals come through a bit, but the guitar is up front. Now, I wasn't there for that part, and I can only guess that the guitar player who was funding it, that was his deal. And if that's the case, like, I haven't talked to him since I did this, but if that was the case, then I hope he's happy with the product. But, I mean, we wrote, probably over 40 songs. And if all you wanted to hear from all the rehearsing that we did on the album is guitar, then why the fuck have a drummer? Why the fuck have a bass player? So it's just that kind of deal. I believe in the clarity of the mix first, and you can punch it out after with warmth, make it huge. But the initial recording of the instruments, you have to have clarity. You have to be able to hear these people's parts. It's only fair. So that's where I became a control freak, and that's, some may think it's a bad thing, but bottom line is you haven't paid money to go into a studio and have it just wasted on something you should be proud of, but to find out that your part is like buried in the mix. So I understand every musician who plays their instrument has they want their instrument to come out front. But the whole focus first should be clarity. Can everybody's part be heard? You can add the dynamic factor after. These particular products, the three last albums from this one studio, which is no longer here, same problem with all of them was the clarity factor. Parts that I played or some of the other guys played are missing. They're just faded. They're so far in the background. Sonically, it's a waste of time. You might as well have just muted the damn thing, the part. You may as well have just muted the hi-hat and muted the ride cymbal, and called it a day. And the other funny part is to bring in 10 vintage snares ranging from 1950s through the early 70s and have them all sound like water balloons. That's just a joke. That's just an absolute joke. I can lay those, and I've done videos on them. I can lay them out in the studio and they all sound different. How do these all sound the same in the studio? Like, why bring them? You asked me to bring them and you make them all sound the same, like a water balloon. It's just horrible. Again, wasn't happy with it, but hey, I was a hired gun. You're at the mercy of whomever if you're doing something for somebody, and you walk away from them. It's like, here's your drum track, and you walk away. That's at the end of the day. You kind of pay the price. So it comes down to, now if I do drum parts, you're going to pay for it, and if I'm disappointed in it, I still got paid. These, I never got anything for the misery. And it's, each of these projects was years of my life rehearsing in a basement. They rarely played live. So rehearsing these songs, except for the first album by Wishbone, which was a last second call out. I didn't really have a say either way on that one by default. But the other albums, I was like part of the project. But I don't know, just control and the lack of having control, at least of your own instrument, your own parts on the songs. Very disappointing, discouraging. And again, this has nothing to do with the songs themselves or the band so much. A band a little bit kind of mess things up, or in the case of the Rainhorses, the flip side happened. We all kind of put our heads together and said, yeah, we got to have a little more control here. So, and the other thing too is whoever puts the most money into the project seems to get all the control, which is, well, that's a fact of life. You join a band, and if you can't afford to go in the studio and someone covers it, they figure that money means they have more control. I've been on the receiving end of that mess too, and it's like, okay, well, all right. So I'm basically, you come to the point where your control of your instrument is now forfeited because you didn't put that much money into it. I've been in situations like that too. The hired gun thing, if someone comes and says, oh, you want to drum on this? And it's like, yeah. I said, we can't pay you, but, it'll be fun and good experience. Yeah, well, I've yet to have a good experience from it. The actual recording part is fine. It's hearing the result after that's not fine. Anyways, that's just my rant on that. At some point you have to take control of your sound, your playing, and what you're getting out of a recording. Now I do my own home recording now, and my whole focus is I'm going to do all my songs. I'm going to make sure I can hear all the parts. That way I'm happy at that point. The mixing after, that may be the struggle, but at least the actual bed tracks were recorded nicely where my parts can be heard. And I'm not a big fan of over-processing stuff on drums. I hate the sound of modern day drums. Those don't sound like drums. People think they do. I got like 29 drum sets. They don't sound like that. They might sound like that if you're dropping them in an empty well, but I'm just not into that canon sound. It's just not me. They don't sound like that on their own, but to each his own. The whole point is to make sure you can hear all the parts you play. And if you don't, become a control freak, because eventually you get what you want. So, and the other point is to be happy with what you play. It just sucks to write songs with a band and then do basement recordings and hear all the parts that you're all playing, and then when you go in the studio, something gets lost. How does that happen? If we can record a band in the basement and hear all the guitar parts, how come that doesn't transfer into a studio? It should, but it doesn't. So that's where you have to do your homework. It's where you have to get a little pissed off and say, okay, how come this is this, and when we come to you for that $4,000 session, how come this is not in that mix? Sometimes you're not allowed that. And then, in my case now, I just walk away from it. If you wonder why I walk away from projects, if my parts aren't being heard, why would I even stay? Why? What's the purpose? What is the purpose with coming up with wonderful parts to a song that aren't heard? It's like where the whole band is heard, but your parts aren't heard. What a joyous feeling. Yeah, not. So if you wonder why I leave projects, it comes down to being heard, and that goes for music-wise and also vocally and creative-wise. Eventually, if you can't get, if you don't have a say in a project, why stay? So, and that's why with these recorded albums and not having a say in the outcome, what's the point of me staying there? I don't blame anybody who's walked away from a project where they have no say. That includes mine. If people walk away from my projects without communicating, you know, at least to find out what the issue is. Most of the time it's we can resolve things, but if you don't want to, or you feel you have no say, you have to at least make an attempt to communicate your differences. These bands, for whatever reason, just never wanted that, and it transfers into the product they put out. You know, like one person running the whole show, coming down to the recording, especially like this one, it's stupid. You're going to get criticized for how lopsided it sounds, and this sounds lopsided. It's all guitars, and I'm not cutting down the player. He plays great on it, but you know, you forked over money, went into a studio, had a sound guy that was horrible, and now you got a lopsided album that didn't sell. Now you panic because you got to recoup the money for it, and it doesn't sell. So you kind of what's the term? Dig your own grave. So anyways, that's my scoop. It's definitely an edged rant, not my usual not my usual type of rant, but I just don't want to see people get screwed over. So, especially when you're paying bucks for a studio. Nowadays everybody records themselves, so you have a little more fun. but and you don't have to pay the big bucks. You can put the money into your own gear, which I think everybody should do anyways. These recording studios, I don't know. I think the music scene is so different now, you may as well just do it all yourself. You're selling the song anyways, you're not selling your engineering skills. In the case of these ones though, especially the Huckster one, you can't even hear the song like it was recorded in the basement. So that's my rant. That's my Glen Yaps for today. Anyways, and I might add some sound bits of these recordings just for a reference point. So anyways, peace.